Titanic, a name that adopted the permissible fantasy of grandeur, of love, and finally, of disaster. However, many may not be privy to the fact that other shipwrecks have caused much more numerous fatalities. Today, we'll explore some of these catastrophic events, diving into their geography and the gory details. Are you ready for the chronological expedition to find a shipwreck even more devastating than the Titanic? Let's begin by revisiting the Titanic, one of the most famous ships, before we discuss other such catastrophes. On April 15, 1912, the giant ship known as the Titanic hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean and sank, and over 1,517 people died. This aggravating event left the world speechless and was a premise for subsequent changes in sea legislation. But as we'll see, the Titanic is not even among the worst maritime disasters. Chapter 1. The Dona P. One of the most devastating maritime disasters in history is the sinking of the MV Dona P. It was a passenger ship on its way from Tacloban to Manila, Philippines on December 20, 1987, when the boat collided with the oil tanker MT Vector. The Dona P was also grossly overloaded as it supplied transport to more than twice the permitted number of 1,518 passengers. During the Table Strait accident, a fire outbreak on both ships brought the two parties together. The fire rapidly spread and raged through the Dona P. Many passengers were locked in as the panic started. Probably due to lack of proper records or work of genocide denial, it is assessed that 4,385 people died, while only 26 were alive, and thus remains the most fatal accident of peacetime naval catastrophe. Chapter 2. The Vilhelm Gustaf. As a deadly shipwreck, Vilhelm Gustaf holds the record of becoming the most tragic event in maritime history. This German ship was sunk by a Soviet submarine on the 30th of January 1945, in the middle of World War II, while it was evacuating civilians from East Prussia. The Gustaf was fatally transporting more than 10,000 passengers, most of whom were women and children evacuated from the advance of the Soviet forces. While sailing through the icy water, the pressure generated resulted in damage that sank the vessel quickly. Estimates of casualties range from 6,000 to 9,400, which makes the event a calamity amidst the war situation. This paper will seek to analyze how Vilhelm Gustaf's tragedy brought into the limelight how war contributes to the worsening of maritime disasters. Some passengers were not soldiers, but rather people who might have found themselves trapped in that terrible situation. Chapter 3. The Kyangya. Another unfortunate incident happened with the cruise steamer Kyangya, which sank on either the 3rd or 4th of December, 1948. An overcrowded Chinese passenger vessel, loaded with refugees escaping from communism in China, hit a Second World War mine that was still floating in the Huangpu River near Shanghai. During that time, the ship's sinking, estimates suggest that between 2,750 and 3,920 were aboard, but the ship's capacity was 1,500 passengers. Many people realized the link between fire and gunpowder. The explosion led to a stampede because everyone wanted to flee. Some were locked down inside the ship as water flooded the vessel. Analysis estimates suggest that between 2,750 and 3,920 deaths occurred when Kyangya sank. Chapter 4. The Jula. The next ship we meet in Africa is the MV Jula. It is as sad as its predecessor in shipwrecks. This Senegalese ferry overturned when it was in the middle of crossing some waves to get to the northern part of the country in September 2002. The Jula was already overfilled and had a maximum capacity of 550 people. Sources indicate that over 1,800 people were on board when the ship sank. Tidal waves and other management negligence caused the ship to overturn, claiming the lives of about 1,863 individuals, most of whom were childhood learners on their way home from school. The Jula disaster raised major concerns about the safety measures of sea transport in Senegal and across West Africa. Investigations showed that inadequate safety measures contributed significantly to the tragedy of the disaster. While traveling, most passengers were not even in possession of their life jackets, let alone observing how to use them in case of an emergency. Chapter 5. The General Slocum. Another great shipwreck was associated with the General Slocum, which burned out on the 15th of June in 1904. It was a passenger steamer carrying German-American families on a picnic on a boat in the East River, New York, when the disaster happened. The fire spread rapidly through the vessel due to a lack of safety procedures, such as falling to replace worn life jackets and negligence in conductor maintenance. Approximately 1,029 people died of 1,300 passengers. The General Slocum disaster unveiled severe issues regarding fire safety on passenger-carrying boats in that period. Chapter 6. The Toya Maru. The other relevant marine accident was the Toya Maru. It occurred on September 26, 1954. This Japanese train ferry was captured on camera going down during Typhoon Marie while in transit between Hokkaido and Honshu. With a passenger capacity of 1,153 passengers, Toya Maru was facing a stormy sea when it capsized. While it is hard to estimate how many people perished aboard due to the inconsistency of the passenger lists, some of the victims did not have tickets. Many people probably died because there were not enough safety measures, and officials did not conduct sufficient evacuation drills. Reconnaissance indicated port officials. Crew members disregarded signals that approaching typhoons required avoidance of voyages at sea or preparation measures to protect passengers' lives while aboard during stormy weather conditions. It is our responsibility to pay respect to these lost souls by waking up their memory and analyzing how history may guide safety at sea. Thank you for joining us on this tour through the history of the maritime industry. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to more stories about the world beneath the ocean.